Hello, everybody, and welcome back to 60 minutes of unscripted .NET content. Here on the On.NET Live show, our mission is to empower .NET developers to achieve more, and we're definitely going to do that today. I'm Katie, one of your hosts, here with David and Frank. Hey, everybody. And our guest today is Jody Donetti. Jody, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, thank you for having me here. Actually, to be here again after a year, because I've been on the show last year, so we'll take a look today at what happened in a year in the world of .NET and caching. So yeah, I'm Jody Donetti from Italy. I do R&D, coding, stuff like that for about 30 years already. So yeah, quite a bit of time.
Wow, 30 years. And I believe last time, David, you were here, so we have a little bit of symmetry between the previous and the current. That sounds great. Should we get into it, guys?
Let's do it.
Yeah, we should. So, Jody, what do you have for us today?
Yeah, so I have a recap basically of what we went into .NET in the last year about caching in general and about FusionCache, my open source project in particular. I would suggest for people that haven't seen it, the last episode, to go back and visit it, because it was, in my opinion, one of the best introduction of FusionCache that I've been able to make, thanks to your invite. And it was an overview of the, in general, caching, problems, pitfalls, opportunities, and how to solve them in a general way, but also in particular with FusionCache. So what I have today is I'll take from there and see what happened again in .NET caching world in the last year, and in particular in FusionCache. So let's begin. This is me, blah, 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 Google Open Source Award, MVP Award. Basically, the same thing. It's like I do coding for a living, basically. And I have to deal with most type of caches along the journey. So caching in memory, distributed, hybrid, HTTP, CDN, offline, more or less everything. And so from there, some years ago, actually in the end of 2020, I came up with my very first, and as of today only, open source project, FusionCache, which the idea was to provide a unified, cohesive way to handle to work with both memory and optionally distributed caches in a multi-level way. So the pitch line, if you will, it's easy to use, fast and robust HybridCache with advanced resiliency features. And for people who saw last year's episode, they will remember a lot of extra features around resiliency and how to better handle transient errors. So errors in the distributed cache or the backplane or the database or stuff like that. As of today, it has accumulated quite a bit of downloads, I have to say. I'm pretty happy about it, 15 million downloads. I think today we crossed that line, and 2.8 thousand stars on GitHub, and the license is MIT, which is very important because basically do whatever you want with it. And yeah, basically that's it. So to get back where we left 1 year ago, and we can see David was already there, of course. So
I was in Fusion. I thought you were showing the current screen. I was like, whoop.
No. So with Cecil and Myra. So where were we? Basically, yeah, I presented FusionCache, and it's basically it. I will not go over all the points I made previously because, again, people that are interested can go and look at that episode. But basically, it's a way to combine memory and distributed cache together. The distributed cache part is optional, of course, so you can use it also as a normal memory cache, plus the all additional features that it can bring to the table, like, again, resiliency features and stuff like that, and performance-related features. It also has an optional backplane, as we can see here on the right side, which is basically a way to handle multi-node invalidations. And basically, to get to the bottom of it, is a way to have horizontal scalability, where you have multiple nodes in your, multiple instances of your application. Each of them will have their own memory cache, local memory cache, and with the backplane, you can have automatic instant notifications and synchronization of all of them in basically real time. That's really cool. So brief overview of the features. It has full cache stampede protection, which memory cache does not provide you out of the box. It supports fail-safe and soft-light timeouts, which are features related to resiliency. Mechanism, in particular, like eager refresh and conditional refresh, makes it so that you can have a more flexible way of handling refresh of the expired values in the cache. And also adaptive caching, which is a way to basically tweak the options for a single cache entry based on the value itself, which is something that you do not have when you call the methods to the cache, or not necessarily. Optionally, as I said, level 2, distributed cache, basically any existing implementation of iDistributed cache works out of the box. Also supports auto recovery, which I remember has been a really cool feature to show off last year. Basically, it's like self-healing for your entire cache, which in case of temporary issues and transient problems and stuff like that, it will automatically resync everything for you for free, and you don't have to do anything. It also supports multiple named caches, so it's a way to configure completely separate caches like person cache, order cache, tokens cache, whatever. Each of them configured totally differently, and they can underlying, if you want, share the same underlying cache or not without having issues with collisions of cache keys. Fully supports dependency injection with the builder, fully sync and async, rich set of options, supports cancellation via usual cancellation token, full observability, both logger and OpenTelemetry. It is a simulator to play with it in a simulated complex environment, so multiple clusters of multiple cache nodes, which is pretty hard to do in the real life. It has a full rich documentation, which I really care about, and both online on the repo on GitHub and also via IntelliSense. So everything is granularly documented in the code. So while if you decide to explore the library, you will understand things as you go along. And again, it targets the basic is .NET Standard 2.0, so it works basically everywhere, both the old .NET framework, the new one, Mono, on Unity, whatever, and it's MIT licensed. So ideally, this is the pitch, so to speak. And I remember this was well received last time. It helps when poop hit the fan, so to speak. So this is it. So what happened in a year? Again, both in FusionCache, but in caching in general in .NET, it happened a lot. So let's see. First, as promised during the last episode, a couple of weeks after that, I released FusionCache v.1.0 finally. So as I mentioned last time, it was not meant that FusionCache was not ready for prime time. Actually, it has been used in production since a lot of years, but it was a way for me to, make the stamp v1.0, like this is it. So it was like more like me taking the time to have the nice 1.0 number than anything else. It was already super stable and performant. So and see, yeah, so that was the main release. And then from there, I released along the year some different multiple versions, v1.1, 1.2, and a brief recap of the, let's say, more interesting features and things that I included in those releases, as being support for keyed services, actually, with multiple a new feature called autoclone, which is a way basically to shield any unwanted changes into the cache entries in memory. If you cache take something from the cache and then change it, which usually it's not a best practice, but if you really need to do that, with autoclone, you can be assured that you will not actually change the live instance inside of a cache, and done so in an automatically super optimized way. So it will do the minimum it must need to do to avoid unwanted changes. Then some other features like more flexible adaptive caching, a soft version of failsafe, meaning a way to kickstart failsafe mechanism, which is like one of the favorite features in the community, without having to throw an exception. So, like the usual results pattern, better recovery, compatible improvements, and local telemetry, and blah, 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 blah. So I also extended a lot the tests. Now there are more than 1,400 tests, and also better docs. Yeah. Question? I heard
no question.
Okay.
I was making a sound when you said over 1,400 tests. So
yeah.
That's
yes. Yeah, there are a lot, and it takes a lot of time to run actually, because one of the problems is that they are time-based, because you have to set something in the cache, then invalidate, pretend there's an error, and then fix it later. So it's it's a lot of time.
A lot of setup, sure.
So
and
what's
the docs,
the current version right now? Just
sorry.
What's the current version of?
I'll get to that.
Okay.
I will not make a spoiler.
I was just curious. Because, we talk about V1 and
absolutely. I
yeah.
will get to that. There's a story here. So about the docs, I care, as I said, a lot. So I also improved a lot of the docs and more concepts covered, more illustration, which I like to do sometimes, practical examples, and so also some more design overview of the features themselves. And finally, a lot of people asked me for that along the years. So I also added diagrams, which you can see a sample of it on the right-hand side. Basically, it's a flow chart of the steps that happens when you ask something in FusionCache and all the things it does. I created a page for that, and I also included like the very simple version to get the basics, and more and more advanced versions with more details. And this on the right is like the full-blown one with all the details, and they're not even all of them, but basically it covers 99% of it. So what also happened, not related to FusionCache, kind of, Microsoft in 2024 in March released Garnet. I don't know still today the right pronunciation of it, if it's Garnet, whatever, you get the idea. So it was a super fast and Redis compatible cache store. And the nice thing is the part where it says Redis compatible. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's nice. Not just to use it in and on itself directly, but also being Redis compatible means that I can use, in theory, the Redis version of the iDistributed cache abstraction. And so that's already a plus. But on top of that, since FusionCache supports any iDistributed cache implementation, it will mean that on day one, people can have basically a Garnet-based FusionCache experience, which would have been super great. Unfortunately, things were not exactly like that, meaning, yes, it is Redis compatible and it supports like the vast majority of the Redis protocol. The problem is that the Redis-based iDistributed cache implementation somehow required the Lua scripting, which was not supported by Garnet. That makes so that I opened an initial on their repos asking what are their plans, meaning are they planning for an iDistributed cache native Garnet implementation, or maybe something else, or maybe support for Lua scripting. Now, long story short, Mark Gravel kicked in as always, so he noticed the thing, and basically the .NET 9 version of the Redis implementation of iDistributed cache now does not contain the requirement for a Lua scripting, meaning now Garnet, it's fully supported even as an generic iDistributed cache for Redis. Not only that, but it can also be used, this also means that it can also be used with FusionCache. So FusionCache is also compatible with that. And that is one of the design decisions that I took up front at the beginning, meaning I wanted to be compatible with iDistributed cache, which has somewhat its limits, and we'll see some in a moment. But the idea was that any existing implementation and any new one will be automatically compatible for FusionCache, which is a nice win. So something else happened. Microsoft announced Data API Builder, which was, by the way, the subject of the last episodes.
It was, yeah.
So as you mentioned it already, it's an easy-to-use tool to create modern web APIs for REST, GraphQL, OpenAPI, native CLI, and whatnot, Docker-friendly. And it has caching. And the nice thing is that Data API Builder is open source, and it needs caching. So as you see where I'm going, DAB is not only is open source, but loves open source, so much so that the GraphQL engine and the caching engine are open source projects, one of which is Chocolate for the GraphQL part, and for the caching part, it's FusionCache. So that was a big surprise for me, I have to say, because like, wow, a Microsoft product using FusionCache for the caching, like cool. And so in May 2024, it went to GA, generally available, and they've been so nice to put a mention of both projects on the documentation. And so thank you for that. And that's been a great thing. Now, what next after V.1? Let's see. Definitely, this beast here. This has been something that I wanted to work on for a very long time, and I experimented with different approaches, different designs, pros and cons, and this has been, to me personally at least, this has been a monumental thing because, I mean, caching invalidation is already a pretty big beast in and on itself, even on just level 1 caching. When you put together L2 and other stuff, I mean, it's almost unsurmountable. But basically, a lot of people ask me for a way to like group together different cache entries. So to, in a way, logically link them together and then being able to invalidate them at the same time. Some call them like cache regions, which has some pros and cons. Others like, of course, tags. Others they have other different designs, but basically that was it. So during 2024, I decided, okay, let's tackle it. And so I made a proposal for the design, which is the issue 319, and where basically I find a way to maybe make it real. So it's complicated, as I said, because basically we need a way to tag entries with some tags, and then later on to say remove by tag. This is it. This is very simple, logically speaking. The problem, as I said, is that when you put into the mix L1 in memory, L2 distributed, the backplane for multi-node invalidation, it becomes complex. Also, L2 and backplane means distributed. And if we remember from last episode, the fallacies of distributed computing kicks in. So basically, there can be issues. You may not be able to reach another component, distributed component. Latency is not zero, and blah, 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 blah. But also there's resiliency, what I normally tackle in FusionCache with fail-safe, software timeout, and auto recovery. But also we have multiple named caches, which seems like unrelated, but instead it is, because not only you have to make it work with one instance, but also on multiple, and some of them may share the same underlying resources, meaning the memory cache, but also the Redis instance most of the times, because you may have costs associated with it, so you spin up a Redis instance in the cloud, but then you use that for multiple caches, and you usually use a prefix. Now, even supposing you have something like that, like remove by tag, the problem is that you don't want products in a products cache and users in the users cache. If you remove by tag easily, you should not remove both. You should only remove one. So it's a very complicated thing. On top of that, as I said before, being based, since FusionCache is based on iDistributed cache, that gave me a lot of pros, but also some cons, meaning iDistributed cache is very limited in the API surface area. Basically, it has a single entry get, set, and remove, and that's it. And also, potentially, it can have devastating performance hit, because if you have, as I've been through, a cache instance with more than 5 million items, and you use tagging, and you suppose you've cached like 100,000 of them with a single tag, and then you do a remove by tag, that's pretty bonkers. It can tear down your entire cluster. So basically, there are two potential approaches, the ones I call the server-assisted and client-assisted. The server-assisted one is where you can imagine the cache backend, so it's called like Redis, Memcache, whatever, actually natively supports in a way or another, the remove by tag feature. The pro is that it would be easy to implement. Basically, you just call a command on the remote cache. And the con, by the way, is that it can have, as I said, a massive performance hit. Also, one last little detail is that basically no level 2 cache supports that. So it basically doesn't exist. So it's not an option. On the other hand, the client assistant approach is basically where the magic happens on the client side, meaning on the caching library, in this case, FusionCache. The con is that it is super, super hard to implement and to implement well. The pro is that you don't need anything by the level 2, so by distributed cache, Redis, Memcache, or whatever. And the other pro is that if done well, can not only be good in performance, but even better than the other one, which is counterintuitive at first, but you'll see what I mean in a second. So I picked client assistant. And what it does in FusionCache world is that basically FusionCache store tags with each cache entry. Now you can, when you set a tag in the cache, you can say tag 1, 2, 3, and whatever. Then when you do a remove by tag, what it actually does is not a remove by tag at all. It just creates an extra cache entry, a special one specific for that tag, which contains the timestamp at which you call the remove by tag, basically. Then at every get operation, there's a check for the related tags of a cache entry, if they have any. and to see if they need to do an automatic cleanup. Basically, if somebody has a background in electronics engineering, it's like a high-pass filter. Basically, it's a way to say, when you ask me for something, I will take it from L1, L2, and before returning to you, I will check the tags. If it has some tags, I will go on each tag and check if that tag had an expiration that happened basically after the moment I cached the value in the tag. If so, I will pretend it's not there. And actually, I said maybe not, because FusionCache automatically differentiate between read-write methods like get or set and read-only methods. If it's a read-only, it will automatically kickstart the cleaning, the removal of that particular cache entry, only if and when is needed. So it's lazy and optimized. But if it's a get or set, I know that if I pretend like the value is not there, I'm about to call the factory to put it there again. So I will save the removal because it will be overwritten in a moment. So all it's very highly optimized. And so the way I described it at first, at least for myself, I was like, I don't know if it's going to happen, because it seems like select n+1 all over again. Because you get a cache entry from the cache, 5 tags, and you go over each of them and you do a call. So it's like, it's not going to work. I mean, technically it can work, but the performance will be so abysmal that will be basically a no-go. But actually, no, because the inherent caching nature, the nature of caching itself, and the typical behavior, and also some probability theory, then you can see something about the birthday paradox referenced here. And basically, it works, and it works actually really, really well. It's a particular design that I picked, that I come up with, but it actually works very, very well. And also, already just a little spoiler, pretty big, let's say, users of FusionCache are already using this in production. One name that I can make is Have I Been Pwned by Tryhunt. So that's pretty massive. That it handles a ton of millions of requests per day. And they're using FusionCache with tagging support, which, to answer Frank, is V2, which I will get to in a moment. So
I totally cheated. I went on.
I knew it.
Jody, I want to know, we can stack the question. We have one question in the chat. We can wait a little bit, or do you prefer we ask now?
No, if it's related to this point, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, it's asking, it was Jose was asking, can we use FusionCache like semantic cache? I mean, using vector search.
No, because the design of FusionCache is such that it is based on the 2 core abstractions in .NET, meaning iMemory cache and iDistributed cache. So basically, I'm limited in only the operations provided by those. Now, for some extra features like tagging, as we are seeing, I can go beyond that, but at least for now, vector search is something that I have not taken a look at, and I'm not that sure that it can work. But I can take a look. If you open an issue, Jose, on GitHub, I may take a look into that a little bit deeper. So design, inspiration. This is pretty nice, actually. What do these things have in common? The Seoul in South Korea, just seen, Chuckman Johnny, famous Jets player, a sip of whiskey, an old late-night doom scrolling session on Wikipedia. I was not able to sleep, and ancient Egypt and Suffolk in England. Crinkle walls, basically. This is the walls on the right-hand side. One night, a couple of years ago, actually, I saw this thing on a Wikipedia late-night doom scrolling, as I said, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know why. I think they may tell me something, but I don't know why right now. So I took a screenshot and I kept it in my phone for like 2 years. Then I was thinking about how to solve the tagging issue in caching. And I was in my very late summer vacation last year. It was October, and I was in Seoul. And I was drinking in a Seoul jazz bar. And Chuckman Jones started playing Land of Make Believe, to be precise. And I was like, oh, God, now I know. And I have like this enlightenment, if you will. And the connection, yeah.
I was just saying how to not disconnect when you're in vacation.
No,
it had nothing to do with the sip of whiskey. No.
Yeah, but then thinking about code.
So yeah, but the idea is this: basically, you see this wall, and you may think, well, that's stupid. Like, what a waste of materials. Like, why do they have this shape? But actually, the nice thing is that the peculiar design and the way the bricks are distributed makes crinkle clunker walls basically more robust as robust, if not more, than normal straight walls by using less resources. Because if straightened, they are longer than a straight wall, but a straight wall, to get the same robustness and let's say performance in general, will need two rows of bricks. And so I like this idea. I didn't know where it will take me to, and now I know. And so this is like the balance that I found in the design of the tagging feature in FusionCache. Basically, the work is like only pretend to be made up front. When you do a remove by tag, it's just set one single tag entry. So basically is big O for one, constant time, technically. And the job to actually clean it up and do the applying the proper logic is not only if and when is needed along the way. Now, if you are on multiple nodes, this may be done on multiple nodes. The job will be shared between the nodes. If you have 100,000 entries tagged with a certain tag, and you do remove by tag, but half of them will never be asked again, the work is solved. You don't need to even do anything. So what about, because a lot of questions start popping out. So what about app restarts? Well, FusionCache already takes care of that thanks to L1, L2 coordination, so taken care of. Oh, what about data for tag one tag, needed by two different entries? Is pretty common that a tag will be used because it's shared between multiple entries. So what about that? Well, cache stampede protection. So even if two different entries that use the same tag will be accessed at the same time, the data needed for tag one will be loaded only once, and the two will be protected by cache stampede. And what about multiple nodes? We have the backplane and some specific extra optimizations that I've made. So covered. What about dynamic tags? Meaning, what about tags that are not known up front, but are based on the actual instance of the object I'm about to cache? I don't know that when I make the call. I only know that inside the factory. Well, in FusionCache, we have adaptive caching, which has been extended to also work with tags, and so that allow us to basically declare the tags only later when we are running the factory. And what about zombie entries? So if I remove by tag, and that includes an entry that is not being asked again, will it stay there forever? No, because of the inherent nature of the cache, meaning sometimes later it will just expire. It's a cache, it's not a persistent database. Potential transcendental errors, fail-safe for the recovery, and all the features in FusionCache automatically covered. What about the slow distributed operation? We have advanced timeout, background distributed operation, and whatnot. So basically, the nice thing is that by building on top of the whole set of features in FusionCache, all of those things are already taken care of and already optimized the way. I added a couple of extra optimizations specific for tagging and one feature that we'll see in a moment, but basically that's it. And I really like this design because it's a fundamental balance between all the things. Like, you only do what's needed when it's needed. You build on top of the previous features that are built. It's inherently linked to the nature of caching and how it works and how tags data are shared between things. So again, it's really, to me, it was like really harmonious in a way. And maybe that's why the music in the jazz bar helped me get this design. I don't know. Maybe it's, or maybe it was the whiskey. I don't know. So yeah, that's been a very big thing for me, honestly. And so to see some code, this is it. It's pretty simple, actually. Normal previous calls in FusionCache, like the set or get or set, now they have an additional arc, which is tags, where you can specify one or more tags, if you will. If you don't use any tag, the performance is 100% the same as before. And only if you use tagging, you will do some extra checks. But as I said, already all optimized and shared. The load is shared between different calls and different nodes and whatever. And the second example, this one is an example of adaptive caching. So you don't upfront the tags, you get the factory. And only when you run the factory, you can set tags based on, I don't know, the article, if it's a news article, the product, the categories, whatever you want. And later on, you simply do remove by tag, or of course, async is the same thing, tag one, and you're good to go. And immediately after that line, logically speaking, they've all been removed, even though the work will be done in the background. In a way, it's like in database design, where you have tombstoning, where you do remove, but the actual remove on the disk will be done later. It's kind of similar to that, or if you will, similar to it's like the opposite of failsafe. When you mark something as expired, failsafe will pretend it's not there because it passed that date. Here, it's the opposite. If it didn't pass the expire date, it will still be there. So it's a nice, like, all around, let's say, common theme, if you will. So yeah, very easy to use, not to design, as I said, but to use, yes, it's very easy. And this led me to another major feature that I added along the year, which is clear. Clear is a feature that they asked me for, like, since I think it was like the second week of FusionCache when I released it in 2020. It was like, please add a clear. It's easy. It's like, no, it's not. You don't understand. It's hard to explain because clear is like, you think of a cache as a dictionary in a way, and you're like, well, dictionary.clear. How hard can it be? Well, if you have two different two different FusionCache instances, and they are all using the same underlying L1 memory cache, you cannot clear, because if you do clear on one, you are clearing the other. Not only that, but L2 distributed caches, they do not support the concept of a clear natively, so you cannot clear. And also a lot of other stuff that there's a lot of complications. But now that I've done tagging, I've used tagging plus two special tags that are internal, and it just works. Basically, now that I got tagging work, I declared basically one special tag for to mean like removal, like a proper clear, and another one to basically means expire all, meaning still be available for fail-safe scenarios that we saw before. And basically, it all just works. And as in the example, I set 3 entries. I do a cache.clear, and that's it. From the next line, the cache is logically clear, even though nothing has been done on a massive scale. Even if you have 5 million items in the cache, instantaneous. And that's really, 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 really nice. So, questions?
There was none in the chat, and I don't have any offhand.
Awesome. So, for the third major feature, yeah. So, wait. Back to early 2024, because we had our very nice episode, but then something happened. And this something is what basically was born as iDistributed Cache updates in .NET 9, which later became known as HybridCache.
HybridCache, yeah.
Yes.
I wanted to say that way earlier, but I was like, I'm sure he's getting to it. He's building up.
Yeah. I'm building up, yeah. So basically, that was a surprise, meaning honestly, for me, it was a good surprise. For others, it was like, how do you see it? We'll get to in a moment. So basically, HybridCache is what ended up being called HybridCache, is a new cache theme from Microsoft, which basically is like the third, I called it like the third leg, memory, distributed, hybrid, that can combine the two together. It's like a multi-level cache theme. Again, combines iMemory cache and undistributed cache. It has a unified serialization interface to work with byte arrays, because distributed caches work with byte arrays, and it has some entry options per call. Sorry, and it has some global defaults called default entry options. So overall, I have to say, design validated, because it's very similar. Now,
let's fight. Before you do that, real quick, there was a question, and I just want to make sure that our viewers are caught up here. There was a question. And I'm certain you'll clarify this.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Why use FusionCache versus Redis?
Yeah, it is not versus. FusionCache can use Redis as an L2, meaning a distributed level. Right. I suggest Robert Edwards to, when you have time, if you want, to go check the last year's episode, because I do like a storytelling thing where I arrive at to why you may need a distributed cache, but why in hybrid cache would be better. But yeah, it's not a versus. You can use Redis as L2.
Yep.
I remember back then, it was beginning of 2024. So, some people were like, so Microsoft is killing another open source project. And well, not just mine, also other caching libraries. And what now for FusionCache? Or should I immediately declare defeat because, it's Microsoft, it's huge and it owns .NET, or, put on a full-on fight. So actually, to me, it may be strange to say, but I saw that in a positive way. And I said that as an opportunity. So let's collaborate. What I did, and again, sorry, Mark, again, I use the opportunity to say that again every time. What I do is I decided to collaborate in a way. I haven't wrote any code for HybridCache, but what I did is I wanted to chip in and share my experience in caching in general, and with FusionCache in particular as a project. And I suggested some changes maybe in some cases. In other cases, I would say like, cool, good choice, and some inspiration and stuff like that. So basically, I took some time and compressed all my my ideas into one mega comment, which you can see on the right-hand side. What you see here is this small part over here, and then goes on, and this is like 1/3 of it. So yeah, they're now known as mega comments. So the idea was to have everything in one place where people can go back to and have all the details. But basically, what I did is that, again, I decided to collaborate with the team. Why not? I mean, it's a good thing for .NET ecosystem and the community as a whole. The important thing is that they should do it like in the right way, and that was my hope. But that's also what happened, because HybridCache is not just an implementation, meaning it's not just, if you will, like a FusionCache by Microsoft. It's also an abstraction, and you can think of it as distributed cache for multi-level cache. I get paid to stop. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I know. They're talking about in their code. Funny, well played, yeah. Code with Sean.
So basically, HybridCache is not a concrete class. It's an abstract class. It's like basically the same interface, which they picked on an abstract class to be more future-proof, to make modifications in the future and to not be limited. But basically, it's like distributed cache for distributed caches, HybridCache for multi-level caches. And so, and FusionCache is a multi-level hybrid cache. So if you see where I'm going, of course, people ask me, hey, how does HybridCache in .NET affect FusionCache? Will you rebuild it? Will you discontinue the project, whatever? And so I took some time and I highlighted my idea. And basically, this is the plan. This was the plan. Today's reality. FusionCache remains its own independent thing, as it was before. But now there's value in being able to work with a shared Microsoft-provided abstraction, HybridCache. So FusionCache can also be used as an implementation, a third-party implementation of the new HybridCache abstraction. So HybridCache is an abstraction. There's a default Microsoft implementation, first-party, and there can be one or more third-party implementations, one of which happens to be FusionCache. So you can do that and not just use that as an implementation of HybridCache, but also keeping basically the vast majority of the extra features of FusionCache, even when you use that as a HybridCache implementation. Yeah, cool, I think so, even if I say so myself. And this is the setup. It's one line. Basically, when you register FusionCache, you simply add dot as HybridCache, and that's it. Now, if you look at the usage, this is taken from the Microsoft website. Now, don't look too much into it, but it's basically an MVC service or some service or whatever, where basically you have a dependency on HybridCache, the abstraction. Now, what are you going to change? Nothing, because with dot as HybridCache, it will be usable as a HybridCache implementation everywhere. Now, this is already, I think, pretty cool, because you have from like day one a third-party implementation that you can use with some extra features. But it gets more interesting, because even when you use FusionCache as an implementation of HybridCache, you are not just limited in a way to the current set of features provided by HybridCache. You have most of FusionCache extra features like failsafe, soft timeout, auto recovery, and whatnot. Not only that, but FusionCache and HybridCache can work together in the same project at the same time. And basically, the HybridCache implementation will simply point to the respective FusionCache implementation. And if you use them both at the same time, they will both be protected by cache stampede, meaning between the two, only one call to the database for the same data at the same time. Even when you do sync and async calls on the same key, like a sync call on FusionCache, which supports both models, and an async call on HybridCache, both will be protected in the same moment at the same time. And you have also more control over the L1, L2 setup, because currently the HybridCache default implementation, basically, if it finds an distributed cache in the I container, it will use it. Maybe you don't want to do that, or maybe you want to add one without maybe you want to use one for the HybridCache, but you don't want to add it to the global, the I container. So there are some limitations. So it goes over that. And also, since FusionCache supports multiple named caches and key services, it also supports key services while being used as a HybridCache, which is something that currently HybridCache does not support because it only supports one single instance. So I think it's pretty nice, even if you decide or are forced for some regulations or whatever to depend on the new Microsoft abstraction, you can still pick a third-party implementation and play with something more, even just in time for a new version, then you may change later. And so this gets me to Frank's answer, FusionCache v2. So in January of this year, I finally released FusionCache v2. The three main themes were tagging support, clear support, and Microsoft HybridCache support. Those are the three main things which happen to require a lot of work, actually, mostly tagging. Also some performance improvements, flexibility, and blah, blah, blah. But basically, that's it. And some extra features were inspired also, I like to say that, by the progress that HybridCache, the project, went through last year. So I share some of my experience, some ideas, including the name, by the way. And in return, I also picked some nice, interesting ideas to also implement in FusionCache, which has been really nice. And so, yeah, in general, I released it. And there's been a strange turn of events. Now, this is the timeline. In November, Microsoft released .NET 9. And in there should have been HybridCache, both abstraction and implementation. But there has been some delays internally, and so basically they came up with only the abstraction as part of .NET 9. Now, in January 2025, I released FusionCache v2, which was compatible with HybridCache. And only in March, Microsoft released their implementation. So basically, for a couple of months, FusionCache has been the first implementation, production-ready implementation of HybridCache, even before the Microsoft one, which has been really nice, I have to say. It's one of my medals that I will take in my career. And I have to say, Mark has been really great, the lead on HybridCache, because it was like kudos. So I thank him for that. And so yeah, that's been V2. And I would like to take this opportunity to say something about Microsoft and open source, because sometimes it went well, sometimes not so well. I like to see these as a very beautiful example of what can be done by Microsoft and open source together, because the way I had interactions with the HybridCache team, in particular with Mark Gravel, has been really, really amazing. He spent time reading my mega comments. I made more than one. Yeah, sorry. Again, and it's been really nice and back and forth in comments and opinions. And I suggested something. It was like, oh yeah, cool, but also that. Oh yeah, you're right. So it takes time, and I know it's an effort, but I think it paid off, because now we have something which is a new shared abstraction that everybody can use, and then they can pick the first-party implementation or a third-party one. And there's a completeness to it. And also, I would like to thank the Microsoft team, because they also mentioned FusionCache in the official documentation, which technically is like a line. It may seem not a lot, but to me is a lot, really. And for open source people, it really means a lot, because it gives us visibility, a kind of visibility that otherwise we wouldn't have. And the funny thing, last thing I want to say is that it's kind of a circle that is closing in a way, because I decided to create FusionCache when I read a blog post on by Nick Craver and Mark Gravel, back when they were at Stack Overflow, on how we do up caching at Stack Overflow 2019 edition. And I read that, I remember reading that, and I was thinking about contributing to open source more, doing something of mine. And I was like, oh, that's how I do caching. So it's not that dumb, and I feel like validated in a way. And that allowed me to say, why not? Let's try with an open source project of my own. Let's put the face up there and let's see how it goes. And now the HybridCache thing went back, and some of my inputs went back into the project. And so a really nice, circular moment for me. I really, really appreciate that.
That's awesome. I'm so happy for you, Jody. One thing I will say is you keep apologizing for those mega comments. I would say don't apologize for those. Own those. Like, that's amazing. And I know that the team, I also really, really appreciate them. Like, the more in-depth you can get with your comments, the more examples you can provide, the more context, the better it is. And I really mean that. Like, there's a lot of people that are hesitant to like put themselves into like a comment. Don't be. Like, lean into that. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
It was a well-crafted comments also. Like, you put time in it, and like, it was, you were not asking to change like the background color of a button. It was but you know what I mean, right? So you took time to like put your comment concise and like give a description and like
also, it's one of the things that I sometimes say in FusionCache community when I answer to some GitHub issues is like, hey, sorry for the delay, but I really need some time to put the ideas together and explain myself. And I have to say, luckily, that what I see is that people, I have not had yet an experience of people, rushing, hey, where's my features and stuff like that. And at the same time, when I later on came to get an answer, they really appreciate the, how thorough it is, how detailed it is, because, now I understand the flow process and why A seemed like the easy solution, but it was impossible, and B is the right one. And it was really, really, really nice, I have to say, in my experience with the open source community. So so what after V2 and integrate all things. So this is something I wanted to do for some time but I needed like tagging to be there. So now that tagging is there in V2, I did a couple of things. The first was output cache in ASP.NET. Which required basically tagging, and so done in the FusionCache way. It's the example you can see here is basically you register a FusionCache instance, then you say add Fusion output cache, and that's it. This is the last part is the usual output caching code. So basically, it's one line. And also, I really, really enjoyed making the implementation of the actual output cache provider, so to speak, because it was like one line permitted, because all the plumbing was already there, and I simply forwarded the call, and that was it. That was really, really beautiful to finally be able to do that. Awesome. Another one is EF Core second level cache interceptor. Basically, it's a project third-party project by Vahid Nasiri. I hope I pronounced it correctly. That basically is a way to have transparent level 2 caching inside of EF Core. It's really interesting. I haven't used it in production already, I have to say, but the concept is really interesting. I saw a lot of downloads and stars, and I also wanted to chip in and provide the FusionCache implementation. I was about to do that, but Vahid basically surpassed me. And as soon as I released V2, it was like, hey, FusionCache implementation ready, and they released the V5 of their project, which is more open to third-party implementations, and they themselves implement FusionCache because some people in their community asked for that. So thank you, Vahid. And more to come. I'm planning on doing some more, and then a couple of bonus contents, and then I'm basically almost done. And I will shut up. I promise. I know I talk a lot, but it's a passion for me. So DataPay Builder, everything's cool. Caching for the caching engine for DataPay Builder, but let's get distributed. Basically, what they're planning is that to add level 2 caching and also backplane for a new version of DataPay Builder. Basically, I took on the task of doing it, and I went in, took a look at the source code, and basically I extended the configuration system to allow for the extra configuration needed, wired them up with FusionCache, and the work was basically already done. So I don't know. I think that the ETA is about end of April, but I don't want to spoil for Jerry Nixon. So anyway, soon, it will come soon. The implementation is there. They're finishing some tests, but it's all there. And it's been really nice collaboration.
That's awesome.
Another thing is that, what about like FusionCache in other projects / languages or something like that? And I've had a lot of inspiration along the years with other projects and other people in the open source community. And just like they inspired me, it would have been nice for FusionCache to be an inspiration for some others, but maybe it's moonshot or whatever. But in the end, this year, BentoCache, basically it's a project by Julien Repetot, I hope I pronounced correctly, which is basically a TypeScript caching engine heavily inspired by FusionCache. and he has been even so nice to mention that in the documentation. So basically, yeah, really nice. I just randomly discovered it, and it was really, really nice. Both the project, I have to say, but also the fact that he recognized the prior art and the acknowledgement is really, really nice. So there's a little bit of FusionCache in TypeScript, in the TypeScript world, if you will. So really nice. And yeah, one last thing, because I know that this is on the mouth and the mind of everyone right now. Nope, nada. I don't know how else to say it. FusionCache has been free. It is still free, and it will remain free as long as it will. So I'm not planning to make it like under paid license or anything. Actually, to be more precise, I'm planning from the get-go to never make it a paid product. So it is honestly like my heart is here. It's a passion project of mine. It's my first and only open source project. I've been taking stuff from open source world for years, for my entire career, as anybody. This is my way of giving back something. So I don't want to make money out of it, so much so that I don't even have donations open. For example, a lot of people ask me, hey, I want to donate, where can I go? No need, really. There's no need. It's gone. It's good. It's good like that. So, I mean, I don't want to make money out of this. I don't need a license. I don't want to do that. So if you can trust me in a way, at least there's that. And with that, I ended my presentation, and these are my contacts, if you will, and contact me, and yeah.
Well, at the very least, I'm encouraging people to visit your open source project at github.com/Ziggy Creatures /FusionCache and give him a star. I have myself, I can only give one. Each of you can only give one. Please give him a star.
Thank you. Yeah.
You already have mine for at least 1 year. And when we did, I forgot, like, yeah, no, it was 1 year ago. We did Open at Microsoft, right?
Oh, yeah. It was, more or less, yeah.
I think it
March,
was.
maybe, yeah.
Oh,
With,
I love that project.
David, yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
And I like the spirit of like collaborating with Microsoft and like inspiring people in TypeScript and still like having kind of like, you mentioned in their doc and stuff like that. That I feel like that was my comment in the chat. Like that's really open source.
Yeah.
I love it.
I also talk about this at the summit and every time I can, because I think it's important. I understand, for example, if you allow me a moment, I understand some potential issues that, for example, Microsoft may have if you look in the past, like including an open source project in some templates, with the product, and then it becomes paid. I understand that. But also I think there's from 0 to 100, there's a shade in between where you can go, recognizing prior art, recognizing the existence of some open source projects, give them visibility, and say, hey, it's free, it's paid. You look it up. We are not responsible for that. It's at least a way to broaden the breadth of the .NET ecosystem as a whole. Because when you go into .NET, even as a newcomer, I use this metaphor at the summit. Vertically, it is perfectly positioned because you can go super high level with distributed actor models, stuff like that. You can go super low level with collection Marshall and a really long span, and even pointers if you want, unsafe. And there's a whole shade in between where you can land on. And the landing point, I think, is also very good because it's high level but not too abstracted away. Horizontally, I think the more breadth into the availability of open source non-Microsoft projects in existence will be good. So this is a way for me to say, give them visibility, show them off, and see that that they exist. And then there's nothing. I mean, it will not cost nothing to me, I think. So yeah, it will be good.
Love it.
That's amazing.
Awesome. So I think, should we call it? Is that it? It's good. I don't see any other questions.
Yeah,
so lots of love
I don't see
here.
any questions.
Yeah.
There's a lot of love, definitely in the chat. That's what we can.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you, Jody. And thanks everybody for tuning in to on.NET Live today. It was great to hear all about FusionCache again. And like Jody was saying, he did present this about a year ago. So go check that out if you want more context into the project, and go give that project a star as well. If you want more awesome .NET Live content and shows, we do have other shows. So you can check those out at .net/live. And yeah, we're excited to see you all next week. We're going to be talking with Steve Smith, same time, same place. So we'll see you there.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.